Welcome back to the Pro Series Podcast. This is episode 152, and today's guest is Neil Twa. Neil Twa is the CEO and founder of Voltage Holding. It's a company specializing in launching and consulting and selling and acquiring different companies. We talk all about business, his experience, his advice he has on entrepreneurs that are starting in their own business or just kind of in that space. But before we get into the episode, please like, subscribe, and review this podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts. And now I hope you enjoy episode 152 with Neil Twa. Neil, thank you so much for hopping on the Pro Series podcast today and taking time out of your day. Can't wait to talk to you about your business and your experience and everything you've doing.
Well, I'm honored. Thanks for having me on, Eric.
Yeah, and I always like to start off on how I got in contact with you and then also how and why I wanted to have you on the podcast. And the main reason is, I believe I was pitched you from Jen,
hmm
and she sent me over your bio, and I was reading over it, and I saw that you were in the corporate world and you kind of went out on your own. And
Correct.
that was kind of like an underlining message that came out of this podcast that I didn't know. We are kind of talking about off camera. A lot of my guests were in the corporate world, left to do their passion project or their second career or whatever. And I love hearing that story and how they are able to take that big leap of faith because it is a very, very hard thing to do, especially when you have a family.
Sure. Yeah, it certainly can be. We can certainly talk about all that. I don't know which direction you want to unpack first. I don't like to
Yeah.
spend a lot of time talking about my story per se. I can kind of
Yeah.
about that as part of the process because people really just, I'm sure, want to hear something, gain some insights, not necessarily just listen to me pontificate about myself, which is not super interesting unless you're
Hey,
my mother.
hey,
So,
some people do find that interesting. I get messages all the
well,
time.
we
They're
can
like,
talk a
"Oh,
little bit
this
about
person is like
it.
me." But
Well,
how did it start? Like, did you always want
yeah.
to be an entrepreneur?
To some varying degree, yes. Although that wasn't my upbringing. My dad spent 30 years in a job he retired from. He was in he dropped out of school and went to be in the Navy. He, went through and learned how to be a boilerman and a mechanic, in that respect, and didn't even go to college. And so he just taught a good work ethic in me. He taught me the skills to, pay the bills, if you will. But he didn't really teach me how to become an entrepreneur. Actually, my family and extended family had some entrepreneurial aspects to it. My uncles worked in their own contracting businesses, and my one of my uncles built a boat company that led to other things and setting some really cool standards for what it looks like to kind of do other things. They kind of became mentors to me, if you will. In the greater thought process that kind of led to me, realizing that I could do my own thing at some point, but just based on time in market where I was, I'm 48, but not that old compared to how fast life has changed in the last 2 decades for all of us when the internet came online and things have just moved miraculously in speed, in technology and speed and how fast things have gone. The world has now become a flat communications channel, which is quite fascinating to have watched such a difference since I was a young man. And just getting access to the internet, CompuServe at that point, and then and old Ma Bells and AT&T dial-ups and all the crap we had to deal with back in the day. I still have triggering PTSD when I hear that dial tone from the dial-up, right? But I knew that I had the capacity to do it, but the market wasn't there, and I wasn't sure exactly what to do. I honestly was going to go be a fighter pilot. That was my dream. That's what I wanted to do. I
Oh,
wasn't planning to go to college. I was just in high school to coast along until I could get into the ROTC and then go, just take the 2 year opportunity to become a fighter pilot with the U.S. Air Force. That's what I wanted to do. My dad was a Navy man. I wanted to go Air Force. Turns out I don't fit in the cockpits. So I got rejected. I was too big. I'm 6'5", and I just didn't fit the profile of the guy they wanted to be in. And the F-16s at that point wouldn't fit me. There are larger planes and fighter pilots now, and get in at my size, but not then. As it turns out, that was okay because honestly, it led me on a different path. I ended up going to college. I got some music scholarships because I played trumpet and classical jazz. And so that gave me the opportunity to go to college, even though I didn't want to be there. Long story short, failed out. Thankfully, the internet saved me because in my third year of trying to figure out what the hell I wanted to do and most likely going to live in a van down by the river playing music, the internet said, hey, you could try something different. Now, no one knew what it was, so I was forced into the corporate world really at that point to go where the money was because academia wasn't there yet. We were just setting up computers. Corporations were spending a lot of money to get on the internet. And so I just took that route. And so I worked myself into a job. I got to be on the first team that launched the first mobile phone at Sprint. So I was in the early stages of mobile, which was fascinating. to watch that explode from being the 5,000th employee pulled in from a contractor to an actual employee. They did an internal call, and I was contracting in Kansas City, and I got a full-time gig with them and got to be on the launch teams for that first phone, and then watched them expand that into basically 80,000 employees by the time I left. IBM had come in and picked up a project. I made friends. I finally discovered the real thing behind business, which is who you know that gets you in there and what you know that keeps you there. So I started to make friends with the partners and people in the IBM side, and eventually a job rec opened and they said, hey, come check this out. They flew me to Armonk in New York. I interviewed for 15 minutes and I was in IBM. So with no degree and only experience, I was now in IBM. So we called it I've been moved, which means I was flying all the time and constantly traveling the world and traveling locations, which was cool at that point, a lot of fun. And it got really old near the 5th year because I was traveling 200 days a year the year before that. And that was just road warrior status. I couldn't keep up with it. And at the end of that, I knew that there was a bridge somewhere. I was doing a little side hustle. I was playing in the game server space and online before game servers were twitching. And I was in YouTube, and any of that stuff was a thing. We were basically running the codecs or the audio like you and I are using right now in a digital format. We were hosting that on servers in Texas so that multiplayer online gamers could talk to each other because it wasn't built into the games. I'm so dating myself when I say this crap, right?
Oh, wow.
Because it's just the standard now of everything we do, including it's our mobile devices. Well, back then it wasn't there. It wasn't connected. So for a while, I had about 20,000 subscribers on servers, basically billing. And so that was going to be my, ramp out of the corporate world. Long story short, that failed. I failed a marriage because I was a horrible person. And, she left me and I helped that happen. And there's a whole nother story behind all that. But that really set the course for a complete transformation. And so as I got to that last part of my life and everything was moving past that point, I had to give up the business. And it was like, well, now what do I want to do? And I met this lovely lady on a trip through Kansas City. Once again, I'd come back. I'd been traveling. I lived in New York for a while. And it turns out, she was a friend of a friend. And I kind of just fell in love with her. So that really shifted the direction of my life because she was a Midwestern girl out of Oklahoma. And I had been living on the West Coast when I grew up. And then I'm traveling around and living on the East Coast and everything. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll see what happens in the Midwest. And so I shut up, shop there. And we started my business in 2007 after IBM said, hey, go to Argentina or you're out. So I was forced into a position, and thankfully I knew at least 3 months before that was going to occur that I could make a decision to decide what to do. And I think we have those opportunities. I think people maybe listening to this have had some of those. Maybe they missed them. Maybe they thought about it. I'm not somebody who's typically victimized by things. I don't think about them that way. I don't let things react to me in my life and then deal with them after. I typically am proactive, even to a fault, to deal with anything around me before it turns into a situation where I can feel like I've got victimized by it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so I've always been that kind of person. I think it's just me. I don't know that you're trained into that. I think that's just kind of who I am. I think I've adapted it over time and experience heartaches and problems that came along, but I'm just not somebody who gives up or sees a challenge as insurmountable. I see a way around it, over it, through it, above it, whatever, blast a hole through it. And so when that came, I was like, okay, great, I can figure this out. I got 3 months, we'll figure out what to do. I'll start a business. We'd gotten married in March. They did lay me off in June, give me my early retirement package. I'm like, that's fine. I'm not moving to Argentina. I've got my life in the Midwest now. And it turns out a few months after I decided to do that and left and took the severance or whatever, we found out we were pregnant with our first child not long after we got married. And so life was just like, this is so much fun. And then it all kind of just changed very dramatically, right? The old thing about there's no perfect time to start a business. Well, I was the epitome of that because literally everything that could be challenging became challenging in the first year and 2 years after, including a new marriage, new baby, new business. My wife went on bed rest, so she couldn't work anymore. So her income was gone. So by the time we came to June of the next year, we had no income, a new baby, and a small fledgling business that was trying to get off the ground, right? But again, stubborn tenacity, don't like any challenge, going to figure this out. I just put my nose to the grindstone. Now, what I discovered in that process, which some of you may wonder how this works for you if you leave and try to figure out what to do, I ended up just trading time for money in a nicer way. I just made more money as an independent contractor in doing management consulting than I was when I was an employee. So I started to charge more money per hour, like 10 times more per hour. And people were saying, great, let's do that. Because I was actually fixing projects and problems they needed to solve. And so instead of going back as an employee, I just hit them up as a contractor. And a couple of them said, sure. So I went into my own management consultancy as a self. But now that was great. However, I was just making more money, but still trading time for money. I still hadn't got out of that mindset yet, right? And my mentor who was working with me. And if this is boring, I could stop. If this
Oh
is a
no,
long
you're good. You're
long-winded answer to your question, but the thing is, I got a mentor, and that's one of the major things that kept me from basically crashing this whole thing and going back and getting a job and ending. Like, people want to know,
yeah.
what do you do to overcome problems like that? Well, I went and found support. I went and got a mentor. I got a sales mentor, someone who was very good at sales. He ran his own little business. He was willing to pay me for my contracting time, and then by proxy, I got to be around a guy who was really good at sales. And so I really learned how to get people into a business, to inform them, to really understand the truth that people want to buy, they don't want to be sold. So how do you pull them into a position of being in that way so they demand what you want? What's that no risk offer, the Alex Hormozy thing? How do we make an irresistible offer? So he just knew it intrinsically. He was just an old school sales guy.
Hmm.
And so just gleaning that, sales fixes everything mantra from him that he beat into my brain, it was all about ethical selling, information selling, and value selling. It was never about buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, right? And it was always about how do you put value into someone else first, and then through the purpose of helping them get to where they're at, you will gain profit from it. That was one of the greatest things he taught me. And with that, I then gave people employment, which I wasn't willing to do because that was another level of risk I wasn't willing to take at that point.
Oh, yeah.
So then I started to hire consultants and put them on projects and trust them to go out and train them to do it. And they were other management consultants, so I did my best to vet them at the right level. Some of them were ex-IBMers, some of them were Accenture, some of them were in other areas. So they had been doing that business before, so I felt it was lower risk. And eventually I had 10 of them underneath me. By the time I got to 2010, we actually subcontracted on both public and private sector projects and helped deliver the 2010 census for the IBM team as part of my subcontracting gig. So they were out there doing that, which freed up my time to learn more about business development and sales. And so I really got into the affiliate marketing side of things. I got into what was, sales from the online. I hadn't really been doing that much because it was all referral based. I was still selling in the B2B world. I wasn't really selling in the B2C, business to consumer world. And so through the learning of traffic and media and media buying online,
Hmm.
I started to learn how to acquire customers outside of just the B2B world, right? How to inform them and educate them and put them into a sales process and develop that so it would grow, right? All the things about growth, new risks, new opportunities. Well, I learned I was very good at it. In fact, we didn't have ad networks at that point. There was
Okay.
no paid click traffic on Facebook. It was just extremely new. We were running on spreadsheets and new systems that were being developed to push out the traffic. So we would put a creative in a spreadsheet and upload it to the system and say, okay, we're willing to spend $100 or $500 and then wait and see how the data came back.
Hmm.
So it was a total Hail Mary pass at that point, because you were just doing regular, just kind of display advertising. There was no interest targeting. There was no UI and graphical interfaces. There's none of the things that we all enjoy right now that everybody thinks it's so difficult to do all these things. And I'm like, dude, you had no idea, man. We were like Hail Mary passes on spreadsheets. So, I got good at it. It actually took me 300 campaigns to get good at it, quite honestly. My 301st campaign kicked off. And when I say kicked off, it means I was making more than $100 a day in profit. The first campaigns all failed, and I gone $10,000 dollars or more easily into debt on credit cards buying media that wasn't profitable. But I was determined to learn how to do that. I just knew it was going to work. And eventually, it dawned on me as I did this, 301 and 302 and 303. I'm like, oh, I'm starting to figure out like what I did wrong. Why wasn't this working? And then it was kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. Like every campaign after that, until I was doing more than $1,000 a day in profit, were working. And I'm like, well, dang, I'm making way more money, not managing people, not doing the staffing, not doing the management side. I should just get into this full time. So I did. So by the time 2011 and 12 came around, I was just doing affiliate marketing on paid media traffic and making way more without all the employees and overhead previously, right? So I realized I could do all that. And then I was like, well, how does e-commerce figure into that? Well, that was digital commerce without a product. That was without a brand. That was just me flipping traffic for a product. So one more time, in my stubbornness, I realized I was just trading time for money. And I was flipping other people's products and no value, no brand, no intrinsic, no organic, nothing. It was just me again against the world. So I'm like, well, this has to change at some point. Or if I die, the whole revenue stream stops. If I'm not there, nothing keeps going. My family is really dependent on me as a single source of income. That really can't work if this is going to become a real business. It's time to play the big boy game. So I decided to go out and own the brand. So I went to the process of getting a mentor again because I wanted to get somebody in the e-commerce world, and I really wanted to get into the physical product world because I could see both the digital side, which I've been doing purely to that point, and the physical tangible assets of products I could put in my hand and I could put money into. Like I could buy a physical asset. So that really was intriguing to me because I'd been doing pure digital. So I could take cash and transfer it into another asset. So I got that, so I started buying some test inventory and figuring out how that worked. And I took some training, and in the process, I met a really cool dude who'd never worked his entire life. His name's Reed, and he had businesses and been really big in the real estate and portfolio side and doing a whole lot of other things, and very operationally and process oriented in his brain, way more detailed than me. And I said, hey man, we should pair up on a product and brand and see how we can do this together, because he was also in the learning process and so was I. And I'm like, hey, two heads might be better than one. And by the way, you think very differently than me. So if you think this way and do these operational things and figure out how to source this and whatnot and determine the product opportunity, I'll figure out the marketing and the branding and the customer side acquisition, and let's see if we can do this. Well, we launched a couple products and played around. We started on Amazon because there was this opportunity that just looked like a lot of traffic, and being a traffic guy, I'm like, well, it's just another traffic source.
Yeah.
So we started launching some test products on Amazon, like, holy crap, we can do this. And so by the second year, which would then have been around 2013, we had been launching a lot of products that still weren't ours, but then developing into brands where we could own the product as we learned the system that was Amazon. And then it dawned on me. Like one day I literally was like, why is this bugging me? I can't figure this out. The automation system, the intelligence, this filing system that runs behind Amazon, it was very familiar. The way the products would rank, the way the engine worked, the way the traffic was coming on, like there's so much familiarity to this, I can't figure out why. And it finally dawned on me. It was a system, okay, of learning. It was a system of intelligent display and knowledge and accumulation of knowledge through e-commerce and data that was delivering products, that it was very, very similar to algorithms and systems we were developing at IBM.
Oh,
and I'm like, oh, okay, hold on. This is very familiar to me all of a sudden. I couldn't put my fingers on it. So I started to think back and looked up some of my old notes and was like, okay, let me start testing these things with the Amazon algorithm and see if it responds the same way we were developing algorithms in my IBM days. Sure enough, it did. So I'm like, oh my gosh, the core aspect of this Amazon engine right now is a learning and knowledge management system that delivers information just in time to the customers, as Amazon would then later say, 30 seconds to all people at all times, right? And then they had the product as the output. So they had bought this logistics freight company, rebranded it as FBA, fulfilled by Amazon, and used their technology that used to drive books and algorithm to then fulfill the products that they mechanized in their system. Now it's called Amazon FBA. So they brought this company together, and that company still operates separately under Amazon's PO as a logistics company, the sixth largest logistics company in the world, with its own planes and ships and everything now, okay? And that's a separate organization within the Amazon empire, right? So they had this .com delivering products and books, and then they started delivering more physical kinds of products, and then they had the fulfillment center, so they combined it together, and I was like, wow, I could see the future of this just becoming enormous. So I dumped heavy money into it.
Yeah.
So by 2015, we had our first seven-figure brand. And after that, once you kind of crack that barrier, it's just a repeatable process of systems and optimizations. We started to standardize how we would launch a product, what a brand would look like, how the system was responding to things we did to it, because it was just organic traffic growth like crazy. Paid media and PPC marketing wasn't a huge part of it yet. So we were really focused on, hey, how is this algorithmic working, and how can I get it to respond properly to the signals and the title and the images and graphics? How do I get this thing to rank? SEO for Amazon, basically. And was finding that it was just the same process over and over again, just like you would use in the learning management system. And so I just kept repeating that process. And so it was like shooting fish in a barrel, product after product. We were scrambling to get inventory and capital together to just keep up with growth, right?
What kind of products were you selling?
Anything and everything to all people in a box, from supplements to kitchen supplies to outdoor gear, anything and everything. We sold it all.
Okay. And were you the ones like manufacturing it and figuring it out, or are you just buying it from a manufacturing?
We were getting it from manufacturers, customizing. So the phrase we have is innovation over invention. Now, I have been an inventor. I'm on patents. My partner is on patents. We have been inventors. We know the process takes longer. It's more costly. You've got to do a lot of more market research and stuff. And so we kind of discovered through that process, the innovation was the option. Like all the data was there. Products were already sitting there. We could capture demand for those products. In fact, I love to tell the story because it reminds me of my kids. But my youngest my third youngest at that point, I have 4 daughters. She was up one night, 4 a.m. crying. Mom was really tired. I gave her a bottle, flipped on the channel, infomercials while I'm feeding this kid the bottle, right? Come across this product, and there it is on the television. It's called Belt Buddies, right? No, sorry, Seat Pets. Excuse me, Seat Pets. And Seat Pets was this product for kids, goes in the car. You know, you're a new dad. I still got 3 kids under the age of like 4, and I'm like, buy products for your kids, right? And so then I was like, hey, wait a second, I can sell one of those. Like my brain was just shifting, finally conditioning to shift into the seller affect and not the buyer. And so with that, I'm suddenly like, I could sell one of these. So I called my partner the next day and I said, hey, check this product out. Like they're doing an infomercial. There's got to be a lot of money in this. They're spilling over. We did the research. We realized that we had a really crappy presence on Amazon. And we thought, hey, could we capture the demand of that, infomercial coming into Amazon? So we launched our own. We did a Hail Mary pass on 2,000. I don't recommend people start with 2,000 units, but we did. And we launched our own Belt Buddies. Our brand was Belt Buddies. Their brand was Seat Pets. And so we launched it and we discovered what we call the demand capture, what we later on would term through my mentor, Kevin Harrington, from the Shark of original Shark Tank, that it was an as seen on TV moment where we were capturing demand from the television and off assets onto Amazon and then capturing Amazon's demand for that product ahead of the competitor who was running there. So we learned innovation. We did innovation of the product, the size, the shape. We went and found the things that people didn't like about their product, and then we made our product better and said to everybody, these are the better things about our product. We sold 2,000 units in 8 weeks without any marketing.
Wow.
Suddenly we're like, wow, this is huge demand capture. We never considered it that way. We never thought about the way it would turn out. We thought Amazon was more brand discovery, which it was in the early days, but it was shifting very fast due to how quickly they are taking over market share, that it was becoming demand capture. Okay. Which means anybody looking online, social commerce, anywhere else, this was pre-TikTok days, right? This was more of the, MySpace went into Facebook and all these days and people were starting to think about it and running ads. And so there's all this other audience and conversation happening on the web and display ads for Google. And people were seeing all these products pushing into the market really quickly. But they'd already started to establish a trust relationship with Amazon. So they would go over to Amazon to find out if that product existed. Okay, kind of like the old days of websites and is it a real business and you had to put a brochure up. This was, if you're on e-com, you should have an Amazon because people are checking to see if you're legit. If you're on Amazon, you must be legit.
Yeah.
So we went into the demand capture phase in 2016, 17, 18, and beyond. With that, it was how do we capture all this off Amazon demand that is now becoming on Amazon demand for the products that are out there, innovation. So we just went in and used Amazon's data, built a tool set and an algorithm with my partner's help. The first version was called ASIN Inspector. And we started to pull down data. We started to pull down awareness. We bought the rest of the company from the partners that used to own that software so we could own the algorithms. And then we developed it into what we call now our greenlight process, right? And that is basically determining at a data level products that already exist and ones we compete on and create brands no one's ever heard of, go compete with them in the market, and then out-innovate them to capture the demand that's already coming in. That has turned into an absolute juggernaut because they are now 8,600 units a minute. 8,600 units a minute moving through Amazon. So it has become now 5% of all the retail sales in the United States are now on Amazon. It is now the largest demand capture platform of any of the power. It has 40% of the e-commerce market share. Up that 40% by the two of those. And so TikTok shops now, and you find a product, people are spilling over like 20 to 30% onto Amazon. So we still follow our as seen on TV demand capture, and we just launch brand after brand after brand. We have done a lot of sales. We've helped a lot of clients do sales. We started to teach people kind of what we did because they just kept asking and bugging. Positions and mergers and exit phase of our quadrant, the Kiyosaki quadrant. I've gone through that in 17 years, and now I'm in the business investor side. So we're buying companies that have more than $1 million to $3 million in EBITDA, and we're acquiring them into our portfolio with the eventual 5 year or so exit as that portfolio builds up. We'll be acquiring 5, 10, 20 companies over the next 5 years, and that portfolio will all be conglomerated together to make one large exit. So that's where I'm at now. I'm in the investor stage of building and growing. I work with a small group of clients that kind of want to do that with us. I'm usually very skeptical of who they are, and they have to go through a qualification process with me. Otherwise, I don't work with them because I'm very busy on our business side. I'm very busy with the businesses we're trying to acquire. But I do let a few people come along because they turn into operators. So remember how I had the employees, got rid of them, and then ran into some of that problem. I never really wanted employees again. And so the way I did it this time was that I built CEO operators. And with the CEO operators, they become successful in learning the process by teaching them one-on-one, by mentoring them through the growth stage, through the product and development and all of that, so that they become great operators, become independent 100% business owners. With that, they then have opportunities to partner with me on businesses we run, businesses we're acquiring. Some of them even help coach some of my clients through those processes now that they're business owners. So I don't have employees. I got like, subject matter experts who are very, very good because they run their businesses already and helping to show people our product launch playbook. And we are continuing to grow and develop new brands all the time.
My gosh, that's so
That's a
cool.
lot. Sorry about all that. That was
No,
way too much.
no, I enjoy that because I didn't know anything. I see so many nowadays TikToks of people talking
Yep.
about selling brands on
Oh, sure.
Amazon, and
Yeah.
I never understood how that worked or actually knew anybody that did that. So hearing that
Well,
side
most
of
people
it
did
is
talk
really
a lot
cool.
about just the Amazon FBA side. Not to cut you off. Sorry, there's a little delay. I didn't mean to
Oh,
speak
you're
over you.
good.
That is the first platform that I incubate a brand new brand on for all the reasons I just told you, because I can capture demand,
Yeah.
existing market demand from 150 million buyers, just crushing it every day on sales.
Hmm.
So I take a product in there and I basically say, hey, do you like this one with comparison to the other ones? It's very quick for me to then determine demand capture. Once I can demand capture on Amazon, I can then reverse that into other sales channels. So we will
Hmm.
go into other sales channels after we capture demand on Amazon and then move that brand out into demand discovery, which would be opening a TikTok shop or a Shopify or paid media or other, QVC or retail or online or anywhere else we can move that product. We'll
Hmm.
move it into omni-channel. Amazon's just the first place we start, and then move it into multiple channels, creating a holistic e-commerce company, which
Hmm.
has a higher multiple valuation of exit.
Hmm.
The whole point.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So what part of your journey made you want to start a book or write a book?
Well, all of my podcasting really to this point has been with leaders in different areas of this focus, whether it's finance, research, SaaS softwares, PPC management, the logistics, the freight movement, the manufacturing. And so as
Hmm.
I'm interviewing these people, their knowledge in these different areas of expertise combines backwards into components really of my 5x5 product launch playbook, the things that we follow in the step-by-step process to grow a business. And so in the interview of that process, we simply got their permission to take the parts of the interviews we did on the podcast and present them as part of that strategy in the book and then give them credit for it. So I've got 15 chapters that talk about the different areas of focus of the 5 steps, everything from the launching, research, foundations of the business fundamentals, correct bookkeeping and accounting, and really understanding all the components of even Amazon PPC marketing, and then how to build these businesses to an exit, right? So that is what's in the book. It basically talks through even the case studies and supportive metrics we use from clients and stuff are represented in that book. And that's how the book was created, to teach people
Hmm.
how we build almost automated income with FBA to launch and grow and scale and exit these companies.
That's interesting. So it's kind of like a cliff notes of your whole podcast.
It is. And it's a little more than Cliff, but exactly right, because they go
Yeah.
pretty detailed in some of the questions and answers that we put into the book.
So are you going to continue writing the book because the podcast is continuing?
We can do another version of the book soon
Okay.
from this past year's podcast, because I'm still continuing to talk with leaders in e-commerce and experts, and we'll simply expand and update any 2024 activities or things we believe into 2025 will be relevant for the next version. So we will do a second volume once we've compiled those together.
That's a really cool concept. What's your favorite thing about podcasting?
I meet a lot of great people like yourself, which leads to a lot of opportunity. You've heard the phrase network is net worth,
Yeah.
right? So podcasting for me, while I don't advertise on it, mine is a 25-minute podcast to just get pure golden nuggets and value from somebody who's listening that can take an actionable thing away from business or mindset or finances or anything they're doing, or even alternatives to investing in like Wall Street. We do a lot of alternative investments, is to give them that knowledge and intrinsic value to listen and gain some from it. So I get the opportunity to network with those folks and reach back to the people who are listening to it. And I do it kind of as a branding exercise for Voltage. But by the same time, I get to focus the expertise of other people on those calls. And again, that's network. And that
Mhm.
has led to deals and joint ventures and the book opportunity and other things that I do with podcasts and guests and and things that I do around the podcast. It has become a marketing activity by not being a marketing activity, if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with you. That's why I do podcasting. The network side of it is huge. So are you doing entrepreneurs from all around the world, or is it just the
All around
US?
the world. Yeah,
Okay.
all
That's the
around the world.
best part.
Well, the world is flat, as the book says, right? With the telecommunications and infrastructure, Zoom calls and stuff, and Riverside, you basically can talk to anybody in near real time anywhere in the world.
Exactly. I always tell people that I was just on a discovery call on Monday for someone that wanted to start a podcast. It was a podcast guest in my past, and I'm like,
There you go.
why not? You're a business owner. It's great for
Yeah.
your SEO. It's great for networking. I think it's such an underrated thing, but a lot of people are thinking, just another person with a podcast type of deal. But
Well, it depends upon how you leverage it. At the end of the day, if I'm featuring the ability for others to reach an audience that they may glean something from, then I'm pulling myself and what into a servant leadership position in that role.
yeah,
By proxy, I get the benefit of the conversation. At times, I get to update or talk about the things that are relevant to what we're doing at Voltage as a part of the podcast, having them as a guest. And then what ends up happening is if anybody wants to find out if we're serious, if I'm legit, if this is a real business and all the other problems people wonder about online, they'll simply go binge my podcasts. And then over time come to realize, yeah, we're a real business. Yeah, we're really doing this. Yes, there's a purpose for getting people involved. When I build operators and exit their companies, I want to buy their companies. That's the purpose that Voltage exists. So as I build an operator and a company alongside of my clients, we have first rights of refusal to purchase their company later on.
mhm.
So I have a purpose driven affect of building people to an exit. And so, the podcasts are just extolling the continued conversation that I get to have with people and answer their questions in their minds until they feel comfortable reaching out.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait to listen to the podcast, and I want to end with where people could find your podcast,
Sure.
and where people could follow you.
Yep, you can go over to voltagedm.com. That's Voltage Digital Marketing or voltagedm.com / podcast, or just click on the podcast tab above. There's also presentation and free training, and I give out my mind maps, and we have workshops and boot camps that we do that you're more than welcome to check out. Of course, the book is on there as well, which I've got for literally just $5 for the digital copy right now for anybody
Yeah.
who wants to grab that. And there's a paperback version of that as well for anybody who wants it. And so voltagedm.com can also go watch the podcast. They're on YouTube, they're on Spotify, they're on Apple, they're on everywhere else.
Awesome. Well, Neil, thank you so much for hopping on and ending your week with me. And can't wait to get this one out and have people reach out to you as they want to learn more or listen to your podcast.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Thank
No
you.
problem at all. Thank you.